So welcome everybody to our 2022 Meet the Judges session. So excited to have you all here. Everybody is pretty familiar with virtual events at this point, but I do have some guidelines on etiquette. We'd love to see you. So if you want to keep your cameras on, please do so. Whatever is most comfortable for you. Default to muted, so please keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking, and then questions and comments are welcome in the chat at any point. We have a Q&A later on, and so if you have questions that weren't submitted in the Google Forms, we will be looking in the chat for those as well. And then introductions, if participating in the QA for the first time, please just quickly introduce yourself, maybe your name, what category you entered in, or if you're a parent, which kid is yours. And then on the right, just a roster of the people that will be joining us today, either on the chat, or they recorded something for us all. So first off, we're going to have a couple words from Ho-Chi Tsai, who's the founder of TaiwaneseAmerican.org. As you all know, we are completely volunteer run, so all of us have day jobs. In his spare time, Ho-Chi is a pediatrician, so he is on call right now.
Hi, I'm Ho-Chi Tsai, the founder of TaiwaneseAmerican.org. I wish I could join you all, but I'm actually at work today. But I wanted to take a moment to congratulate all of you for rising to the occasion and being the storytellers of our community. Your creative works, unique perspectives, authentic feelings, and bold voices signal to me that we have arrived. You know, this year, TaiwaneseAmerican.org celebrated a birthday, its sweet 16th. I feel like I just started it yesterday, and I vividly remember during the earliest years looking for content to post about. Back then, I could count the number of Taiwanese American writers and authors on one hand. Now, with so much more interest and support for writing careers and programs, we were able to actually add a middle school category to this year's creative writing prizes. As someone whose personal mission is to help young people discover their passions, I'm so excited to see this audience grow. But I'll have to be honest, it really blows my mind that what started out as a little blog project called TaiwaneseAmerican.org 16 years ago, that now that has grown older than some of you out there. As this website grew into a community and that evolved into a nonprofit organization, I recognize that it has been built on the Taiwanese American voices and printed word of writers just like yourselves. You know, even after our inaugural prizes last year, we've been able to feature many of the pieces that were submitted. We've actually even brought on one of the contestants as a project manager, and we've stayed connected with so many of the inaugural class. Now you, our sophomore creative writing class, I'm so proud of you for all that you have achieved, for especially taking that first step and saying, I have a story to tell. And that second step of submitting to a jury of accomplished judges to review. How nerve-wracking. And for that alone, you are amazing. And with that type of attitude, I know you will go far in life. So thank you for sharing your written words. And of course, a special congratulations go out to our honorees this year and especially our grand prize winners. I'd like to take a moment to personally thank our team behind the scenes, TaiwaneseAmerican.org's own all-around superstar, Miss Leona Chen. Not only is she the editor-in-chief and manager of our social media, but she herself is a published writer. My dear friends, author Shauna Yang Ryan, the 2017 American Book Award winner, and Alvina Ling, who is the vice president and editor-in-chief of Little Brown Books for Young Readers, thank you for joining our jury team this year. And of course, a big thank you to author Charles Yu, the 2020 National Book Award winner, who spearheaded the idea of this creative writing prizes in honor of his parents last year. I've known Charlie since we were young high schoolers who attended Taiwanese American Youth Summer Camp about 2 or 3 decades ago. Even back then, I knew that he had a story to tell, and he was just waiting for that right time to really share it with the world. It's been a long journey for him, but it's amazing to see how far he's come. Through the generations that we represent, these friendships have reminded me time and time again. And really what I want you to know is that when we hold each other high, encourage each other, and especially our unique talents, we grow together and we rise together. And we are more fulfilled because of that. So I know sometimes that writing journey feels so solitary, so lonely, but know that you have a community right here amongst you all. So after this session, make sure you take the time to reach out to your peer group of writers, fellow contestants, stay connected to the judges and our team, and I promise you that we will continue to lift each other up in so many ways in the years to come. So for now, enjoy this session, have fun, celebrate together. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. I'll hand it back to Leona.
So as Ho-Chi mentioned, and as you probably know, the prize is named in honor of Charles' parents, who are lifelong servant leaders in the Taiwanese American community. Charles, do you want to share a couple of thoughts about your parents and then their community service and then what this prize has meant to them and to you?
Sure, thanks, Leona. And that was a great message from Ho-Chi. I wish he could be here, but that's really great of him to record it. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, part of this again for the second year. We've continued to learn and build a community of people who share two things, a connection to Taiwan or being Taiwanese American, and a love of writing and reading. And I'm so grateful to really a lot of people, including but not limited to Alvina Ling, Shauna Ng, Ryan. Working with both of you is such a pleasure, and it was really fun, and I learned a lot. And then to be doing it for something like this was special. Someday we'll gather in person, hopefully, even if it's just for boba or something. The generosity of a lot of people who have supported this, Matt and Ashley Klein, Tate Tsai, Katharina Lynn, and as Leona mentioned, my parents, Betty and Jin Yu, who, raised me to to know about my Taiwanese American identity from a young age, since I was 9, when they entered me into Taiwanese Toastmasters for kids, which is what every 9-year-old wants to do, is public speaking in front of slightly older kids. I am really grateful to the Chrysanthemum team, and really especially to Margaret Chen, Christina Lin, Ho Chi Sai, and Leona Chen, of just the incredible work that goes on to put together something like this is really impressive and super professional, and really beyond any of my abilities. So I'm just like grateful to be working with Leona and Ho Chi and everyone at TaiwaneseAmerican.org. And mostly though, it's like all of you, of course, everyone who participated. It really, I have, my kids, my wife Michelle and I have 2 kids, Sophia and Dylan. They're a high schooler and a middle schooler. And so I know what it takes to do school and life at that age. Well, I know through them, I remember. And then on top of that, to create work and then to submit it is really, I salute you for taking the time to create that work and to be willing to share it. As Ho-Chi said, that's a big deal. And I really want to congratulate the honorees. To have your work recognized, of course, feels great and means a lot. We read the entries very carefully and saw something in them. I also want to say to all entrants that to have created the work is the reward itself, as I hope you either know or will come to learn. And that, I was submitting things when I first started to write for many, many years, and collected hundreds of rejections and hundreds of form slips and things like that. So I think the work itself is really what has to be what drives you and guides you. And I hope that everyone here continues to find places for their passion or for their interests to go, whether it's in writing or elsewhere, as you continue. You're all students, so you have hopefully, a lot of creative work ahead of you for some of you, and for some of you, you may find, that writing comes and goes in your life, but it'll always be there if you want it to be there. So my parents have continued to be, inspired and surprised by, how this is continuing, and hearing from people in the community that it is starting to, really get out there in its second year, and people know about it. I spoke with a group at Taipei American School earlier, just this spring, actually, and Brenda Lynn there arranged for a talk. And so it's, as probably some of you know, it's made its way across the ocean as well. So It's really inspiring to see, and I'm really grateful to be part of it. So thank you all again.
Thanks, Charles. And then alongside you as an inaugural and then returning judge would be Shauna Yang Ryan. Shauna, I'd love to hear about your experience doing this for a second time. Hopefully it was fun enough for you to want to return, and your thoughts on the prize and then some of the entries that you were able to read.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Charles, for inviting me to judge, and thank you to TaiwaneseAmerican.org and Leona and Ho-Chi for organizing this. I was really excited to be the judge again this year. I was just so impressed. You know, I am a creative writing teacher, and so I read a lot of work, and I was just so impressed with the quality and creativity of all the entries. Just how could all of this be in one community? It's so amazing. And I loved too that each piece had, you could see the author's voice, the personal touches, you know, they were unique. And that's something that is really amazing. It's just like meaningful to me, because when I started out thinking about wanting to be a writer, and I was younger, there weren't a lot of, I didn't know any Taiwanese American writers. There weren't a lot of Asian American writers, and a lot of the books that were available just had certain stories they would tell. And I would talk to my friends how we were always looking forward to that day when you could see the whole diversity of, you know, a community's experience, and it wasn't just kind of pigeonholed. And so I feel with these entries, you can see this whole diversity of experiences. You can't narrow it down to one stereotypical, you know, story. And I just really I loved the uniqueness of each piece and the skill. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shauna. And then Alvina judged us for the first time as a judge for a new category that we were able to expand into, the middle school category. Alvina, what was it like? What were your expectations? How did we exceed them?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was such an honor and pleasure being a judge this year for the first time for the middle school category. So thank you so much for trusting me with this great responsibility. You know, I'll just first say that, you know, like Shauna said, like when I was a child, there were so few Asian characters in the books I was reading, and I really hungered to see that. And in fact, you know, anytime there was a character described as having black hair, I would immediately, you know, grab onto that character and wonder like, oh, could that character be Asian? I even hoped that Snow White maybe could have been Asian. So, you know, it was so cool just seeing all of these entries and the diversity of them. You know, it just gives me so much hope and joy knowing that there are so many talented young authors here who are either Taiwanese American or interested in Taiwan and Taiwanese culture. So I'm just really grateful to have the privilege of reading all of your work. And I did just love that there were so many, you know, it was nonfiction, there was poetry, there was science fiction, there was dystopian, there was fantasy. It was just such a pleasure. And, you know, as an editor, I do read a lot of submissions, and I have to say I was also so impressed by the quality of the writing. A lot of the writing was better than a lot of the submissions that I read that are written by adults, some of them, you know, in their 50s and 60s. So I was just really impressed. So thank you so much, and congratulations to all of you.
Thanks so much, Alvina. And as you know, we are in our sophomore year of this prize. We're hoping to expand for many more years to come. But I thought it might be nice to hear from a participant who actually placed as a finalist in both years of the contest. She recorded something to be able to share with you all today.
Hi, I wanted to take the time to thank the judges of the Buddy LU and Jin C Creative Writing Prizes, and also thank TaiwaneseAmerican.org for all the community building and work that they do to connect Taiwanese Americans. As a Taiwanese American myself, I'm really proud to be part of this community and to be writing amongst so many amazing writers. I'm very grateful that this is the second year that my poetry has been recognized in this creative writing prize. I am super grateful also to Charles Yu and Shauna Ryan for giving us wonderful constructive feedback and constantly looking out to help us further our own writing careers. I'm still friends with the people that I ended up being finalist with in my first in the first year that this writing competition was hosted, and so the connections that I've gained through this writing prize are lifelong, and I know that the community is so large and so supportive in ways that I can't even begin to describe. And so I'm really grateful to all of you, and thank you so much again for another wonderful year. And I'm so excited to see people's writings celebrated on TaiwaneseAmerican.org. And I'm so grateful that I get to share my words again on an amazing platform.
So as you may all know, all selected entries will be published on TaiwaneseAmerican.org throughout the year. And today we'll have the opportunity to hear excerpts from 2 of them. So Charles, do you want to introduce the first reader?
Sure, yes. Ian Sung's Deconstructing Da'an Forest Park. It has that elusive quality that for me is very hard to describe but easy to recognize, which is voice. There's really a wit behind the voice in this story, a searching mind that you can kind of feel circling around its subject and not quite landing on it, but in the process really having offerings a lot of beautiful perspectives on Taiwan, past, present, and future. And so I was just really impressed by this entry, and to echo what other people have said, there was a lot of really great writing in the entries, and I was really inspired to see so much of it. And so congratulations to Ian, and I look forward to hearing the reading.
Hello, I'm Ian. I'm still super speechless and really, yeah, super grateful because, yeah, I mean, I submitted last year as well, and I didn't hear my name called up, and I've been writing for like 10 years, and have my writings like never amounted to anything. So it's, you know, it means the world to me to be recognized in this community. Especially what Alvina was saying earlier too about not seeing enough representation, Taiwanese American representation, especially as a kid. When I first started writing when I was 12, and I got a lot of rejections back then too, I felt forced to try to make my writing more white and to the people I was submitting to. And so I'm really grateful this to, you know, ask my parents about Don Forest Park and story. And there's a middle school category now for. I wish I had it as a kid, but I'm really grateful that these kids have it. And I just want to, you know, encourage them to never stop writing. And I'm really grateful there's a middle school category so that they don't have to reject their Taiwanese American identity like I did back then, right? So, yeah, I just want to say all that before I get into my little excerpt, but I'm just gonna read the first couple paragraphs and then I'm gonna read the end of it. But to give a little kind of intro, it's, yeah, kind of more experimenty, and it's a kind of pseudo academic article that's written in the year 2087. So Deconstructing Da'an Forest Park from the First Journal of Lost Taiwan's History, published 2087, Volume 12, Issue 8, pages 122 to 127. Da'an Forest Park once sat in the heart of Taipei, at least according to the cardiologists at National Taiwan University Hospital, though the pulmonologists must have been more popular when they supposedly nicknamed the park the lungs of Taipei City. Surrounded by a metropolis that suffocated in its own humid smog, it is said that Da'an Forest Park offered a block of fresh air with its fir trees, palm trees, bamboo trees, and, as one American tourist pointed out, bok choy trees. The tourist was a social media influencer by the name of Joe Conman, and he posted that he had discovered the only place in Taipei that had been untouched by modern civilization since Eden. A heart of parkness, he somehow tweeted from the park's remotest depths. This caption accompanied a fuzzy selfie with rows of white-haired Aboriginal elders performing a rare tribal ceremony at 5 a.m. Can you believe my luck? Below the tweet, a presumably Taiwanese commenter replied, bruh, that's literally just my grandparents and their friends doing Tai Chi to exercise, you dumb ass American. And I'm just gonna skip through, but I talk about some of the history that I learned about from my parents about Da'an Forest Park and how it was constructed, and how before its construction there were a lot of retired mainlanders living there, and its construction was controversial in that, you know, those people lost their homes, and I never knew that in all of my my years as a kid going to Da'an Forest Park and playing there. So it was really eye-opening to learn about them. And so I go through that history and then I arrive here. The last known information about Da'an Forest Park roughly dates back to the early 2000s, though nobody knows just how early. These stories were preserved in quasi-corrupted messages from the popular Taiwanese messaging app Line, TM. At first, many people were just wondering how surgeonfish from the Pacific Ocean, not to be confused with freshwater sturgeon, had ended up in the park's famous man-made pond. Most dismissed the mystery as another random, useless stunt from the government. Other locals claimed that a drunk fisherman had released them in the pond when nobody was looking. A few ecologists explained that they had entered Taipei through the Danshui River, then got to the pond by swimming through an underground canal from the Qing dynasty that flowed beneath Xinsheng Road. One conspiracy theorist asserted that the underwater explosion of the Chinese missile tests in years 84 or 85 had launched surgeonfish eggs all the way from the Taiwan Strait into the heart of Taipei. For a few years in a row, always during the 7th month of the lunar calendar, tourists and locals alike started to go missing in Da'an Forest Park. One Taiwanese college student had been found hanging from a tree, a failed exam still bunched up in his fist. Police found another American tourist face down in the pond with the surgeonfish, half eaten by who knows what. Fingers were pointed not only at the surgeonfish, but at the egrets, ducks, and even the turtles. Dozens could not be found at all, no matter how many search parties were organized online. Locals started to fear that ghosts of the old mainlanders, or the spirits of the young Taiwanese protesters, had returned to take revenge on anyone who invaded their sacred land. One night jogger even posted a viral picture using flash photography to capture a blurry 15-foot tall ghost woman pale as the moon. The comment section debunked this woman as merely the beloved Guanyin statue who protected the park rather than haunted it. And then, one day, in either year 102 or 103, a Taiwanese American woman from Florida spotted a familiar log submerging and resurfacing in the pond. She realized it wasn't a log, but an alligator, or crocodile. The Mandarin word does not differentiate between the two. This was odd because alligators, nor crocodiles, were not endemic to Taiwan, and it would have been physically impossible for an alligator or crocodile to swim over from China. Out of their element, the police brought in an old man who had once owned an illegal alligator or crocodile farm in the Taiwanese countryside, and there turned out to be 2 Da'an gators, crocs, that he wrangled into captivity. Everybody blamed the old man for letting alligators, crocodiles, loose in the heart of Taipei, though as the old man was arrested again, he shouted that these beasts were crocodiles, alligators, and not the alligators, crocodiles, that he had once owned. But whether it was the alligators or the crocodigators, the ghosts or the Guanyin statue, or maybe even the surgeonfish, the biggest mystery still remains. Just who were the Taiwanese people who had gone missing in Da'an Forest Park, and what were their stories? Deep in the heart or lungs of what was once Taipei, Da'an Forest Park now sits in a humid mist of mysterious history. Ironically, if you change the tone marks of the 2 characters, the meaning of Da'an changes from big and peaceful to simply Da'an, answer. So that's the excerpt, and I also just wanted to say I'm super grateful again to have been recognized, and I wrote it as kind of a critique of academic articles or my frustration with them, and also my love for stories that can really humanize and represent people as fully human. And for that reason, I'm super grateful again, but I'm more excited to read all of your stories and the ways you represent us as fully human. So thank you, everyone.
Ian, before we let you go, I have two follow-up questions. One is in your bio, you said you were a senior at UC Berkeley at time of submission. So did you just graduate?
I did just graduate. Thank you.
Congratulations on that, first of all.
Thank
And
you.
second of all, I read your bio and I felt it in my soul, and I'd love to read it for everybody else to hear. You told us that although I'm the only one in my immediate family who was not born in Taiwan, I love Taiwan with all of my Formosa-shaped heart. The roots that stretch to my ancestral homeland grow more robust every day as I sit down every night to research and write about Taiwan. One day, I hope to publish a picture book, an early chapter book, a middle grade novel, a young adult novel, and an adult fiction novel, and I hope to infuse my Taiwanese heritage into each and every one. And I hope you can feel and trust that everybody here is committed to helping you achieve all of those things. I can't wait to read a book from you in every single genre that interests you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me.
My pleasure. All right, next up, we are so excited to hear from the grand prize winner of our new category, the middle school category. Alvina, do you want to introduce the winner?
Sure. And Ian, I'm impressed by your piece, but also impressed that you know all those categories of books and children's books. Like, I hope maybe I can help your dream come true. Okay, so Yakuza Baby, great pen name, was born in Flushing, Queens, New York, to Singaporean parents. When she was 8 years old in 2017, she came to Taiwan because her mom was a visiting professor at a university in Taiwan. In Taiwan, she has attended 4 different schools: public, local, private, bilingual, and international schools. She currently lives in Taiwan. And so Yakuza Baby's piece was called Mooncakes, and it was a fictional piece that was intergenerational. I really loved the pensiveness and kind of there's a melancholy quality to the writing. This had a really great, strong voice and point of view. And I think I was especially impressed by how ambitious the story was and the structure was. It delved into history, telling multi-generational stories across cultures, and it really offered new details every time I read it. So I was very impressed. And here it is, Yakuza Baby.
Hello, I'm Yakuza Baby. I somehow decided that I wanted my narrator to be British, so I'll be reading in a British accent. You will know it when you see it. There are people, most often children, but adults too, who are lost in themselves. They do not know their own hearts, but in time to come, they will learn, hopefully. Most have been this person at some point in their lives. Sometimes they will find themselves for a brief, fleeting moment before falling lost once more. Eileen Tan was one such individual, or not individual. The almost 12-year-old had dark hair that was in plaits one week, loose and straight another. She had brown eyes she always wished were blue or something less ordinary. Her room was decorated with fake boy band posters one month, Disney merchandise the next, second-hand anime figurines the month after. As I said, you will know it when you see it. Eileen Tan was lost. 3 weeks, 2 days, and 5 hours ago, Eileen and her father and mother had left their home in New York City for her mother, Jessie, to be a visiting professor in Taiwan. On the ride home from the airport to the university campus, or not home, from the airport to the university campus, the taxi driver had blasted the same song over and over again, and despite not knowing what the lyrics meant, Eileen was filled with homesickness. That is my short excerpt from my story, to leave you hanging. The background of the characters is kind of similar to my own background, but I also tried to make sure that the characters are different and these characters are not real people. Yeah.
That was so lovely. Thank you so much, Akuza. We are about to transition into the judges Q&A, but before we do that, I thought I might ask one of the questions that was submitted to you, Yakuza. How did you settle on the title for this piece?
Well, I had the idea for the story a long time ago, and I wanted it to. The initial idea was notes inside mooncakes and ghosts haunting through mooncakes. So I thought that mooncakes was an apt title.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, and especially for that delivery. That was beautiful. I'm going to move all the judges to the stage now so we can get through some of these questions that were submitted through the Google Forms. And if you have any questions that you want to ask the judges now, please put them in the chat. I will read them out. The first question I have is for all three judges. And sort of as you went through this process, was there anything that you were looking for as you were judging the writing, and what stood out about folks' work?
I can jump in, I guess. This was my first year, and I didn't know what to expect. And there was such a variety, as I mentioned earlier, to be honest, and I said this in my little blurb, that I found it really, really hard to pick because they were so different. And but I think voice stood out to me, just quality of writing, and I did take into account a little bit subject matter in terms of what this award is and kind of highlighting Taiwan. I did take that into account, but there were some pieces, that were finalists that, were not Taiwan related. But I brought all of that into account. But I did have to ask Charlie for some help narrowing down.
When I'm looking at writing, I'm thinking about the form and the style. And some people, for fiction, for example, some people can tell really good stories, but maybe their sentences are not beautiful. And some people can write really beautiful stories, and maybe there isn't so much plot. And so when people can do both, that's really impressive and amazing to me. And then I think sometimes there's a spark or something that surprises me. Maybe the form takes a surprising direction, or the word choice is surprising, or maybe something else just I didn't expect. And so yeah, I think that's often what stood out, like a surprising subject matter. There was one story that was about a goat, and it was just an amazing, totally engrossing story that I really, really enjoyed. And that was, that was surprising. So I think I'm looking for things to go in a direction that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I don't have much, really probably anything to add over what Alvina and Shauna just said. All of that really, I would second. And I think it's also interesting when we compare notes, Sean and I, you know, between high school and college, and then to the little extent I got to dip into some of the middle school to work with Alvina a little bit, just to see how the other judges think about it. I think it seems more uh, like thoughtful. Not that I'm trying to do it thoughtlessly. Something about like I'm trying to say something about like there's something that happens within me just on the gut level, of like if something just strikes you either intellectually or in your heart, you can sometimes feel that too, just a spark. And I don't know how that sounds a little mystical, but maybe as writers, we all sort of know that when we feel it, of like, this is something the writer cares about. This isn't just writing for its own sake. Not that, there's a place for all kinds of things, but when you feel that spark, I think sometimes that comes through on the page as well. If it's, however, whatever form it's in, it can transmit.
I love that. And on the other side of judging is also writing and then editing. So I have a couple questions from the audience about process. So for the authors, what is your writing process? Does inspiration strike at random, or does it have to be sort of squeezed out at times? Shauna, do you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead, Shauna.
Okay, sure. I think inspiration and the writing process are two separate things. I have a lot of inspiration and a lot of ideas, but the process of actually sitting down and turning those ideas into actual work is something different. So, you know, I keep track of all my ideas and the ones I keep coming back to and wanting to dig into and read about and research and spend time in that world are the ones that become longer pieces. And then after that, it's a lot of discipline and scheduling and pushing aside distractions, and that takes all the willpower. But the inspiration part is the easy part.
And then before Charles answers, there was also curiosity about like any unconventional tips or superstitions you have to get into writing a little bit more.
I don't know if you wanted to think of some, Shauna. I'll talk, and then if you have any to share. Unconventional tips. I think I would say in general, I'm similar to Shauna. For me, inspiration strikes, you know, weirdly like when you're getting in and out of the car or in and out of the shower. It's always those transitory moments for me, and I think the reason is that that's when my conscious mind is not trying so hard to think of something, and the real thing wants I'm allowing the real thing to bubble up because I'm a little off guard. And like Shauna said, then you know an idea is just a small part of the way there, and then it's actually working with it. I think the unconventional thing is to actually somehow capture that way of working that I don't know, maybe this is not so unconventional, but um I used to think like unless I have three straight hours to work where no one's going to bother me, then I'm not going to get any writing done. And often those sessions are not very productive for me, or they're productive for like 30 minutes, and then I'm on the internet, or you know, or I'm just it's not working. And I'll often find that uh, when I'm squeezed for time and I just have 10 minutes before my next Zoom or whatever, I'll start jotting things down. And because there's so little pressure, I mean, weirdly, because there's something else I'm going to go do, I'm not expecting much in that 10 minutes. I'll find that I dash off things that end up being much closer to the essence of what I'm trying to do than if I sit there, you know, um, uh, for an official session.
Thank you both. And one of our mission statements for this prize specifically, but for TaiwaneseAmerican.org also, is that to have Taiwanese American literature, it's not just about having the writers, it's also about having the editors and the readers. So Alvina, some of the contestants were curious about how you got started in editing. And then do you have to be a writer to be a good editor?
So I am not a writer, but I hope that I am a good editor. I think it's most important to be a good reader. And so I was a very prolific reader my whole life. And as the editor, my job is to play the role of a very, very careful reader and to notice the things that might take another reader out of the story, whether it be something that's unrealistic, whether it be, you know, something lacking in characterization, maybe it's, you know, the pacing is slow, you know, so that is my job as an editor, is to kind of point that out gently to the authors, the places and the things that I feel could be improved. So, you know, I did write a lot when I was a kid, you know, but I think what I realized is I am more of a reader than I am a writer. There are some writers who are also editors. I honestly don't know how they have the time to do that because I feel like all of my energy is taken by editing. And then how I got into editing, just to be brief about it, but it does involve Taiwan, is, I was a reader my whole life. I also, graduated from UC Berkeley, but I didn't know what I wanted to be by the time I graduated. So I ended up moving to Taiwan, and I studied at Shida, studying Mandarin there. So I was basically just stalling for time while doing something productive and trying to decide what I wanted to do when I got back to the real world. And it was actually a friend that I met in Taiwan who said, well, you're always reading. Have you ever thought about book publishing? And so I just bought a book. I didn't know anything about book publishing because on the West Coast, book publishing isn't really a known industry, at least not to me at the time. And so I bought a book called Making It in Book Publishing. And I followed the advice of the book, and that led me to the East Coast, first to Boston. And that's where I became a bookseller first. So that's when I decided I wanted to do children's publishing because I just was always gravitating to the children's section. And then, did internships and broke in and got my job at Little Brown. And Little Brown ended up moving to New York City. And so that's where I've been. But I've been at the same company my whole career. It's 23 years this August. So that's my story.
Thanks, Alvina. I love this question that was asked in the chat. Could you please talk about a moment which was the most down moment for you as a writer and tips for the young writers to recognize what that is and how to get out of those moments?
I can start. I mean, I feel like writing is really fraught for me. It has there's a lot of anxiety wrapped up with it, and I think part of it is thinking that my draft might be something that people will read because it's going to be terrible, and people will think I'm a terrible writer. And I always have to remind myself, people aren't going to see it until I'm ready for them to see it. So whatever it is now, if I don't feel comfortable with it, people are not going to see it. And to just remind myself I have that control of what I let out into the world really helps me when I feel insecure about my writing, that I have to trust myself as a judge, my future self as a judge of my own writing.
I've got a few. They have a similar theme, so I'll just collapse them into one, which was I had an anxiety before my first novel was coming out that there was no audience for the book, or actually, no, sorry. Yeah, it wasn't coming out. It was going to be submitted to editors, so it wasn't accepted yet. And then I got a whole round of rejections from editors, and one of them said that basically, like, there's no audience for this book, and then it ended up getting accepted, which was an incredible feeling. And then one of the very early reviews of that book was, who is the audience for this book? So like they all, it's like a reminder that, on the one hand, even as you may find an audience and find that dedicated, passionate editor, or really it takes one, is what they say, like someone who really believes in your work and sees what you're trying to do. That was such a lesson to me that what I was trying to say and do would find its audience eventually, and it's not going to be for everyone, at least what I write. So, and that it would have been very easy to sort of to give up, or to like succumb to that doubt that, oh yeah, this is really kind of weird, or people won't get this, or I'm weird, like all of those are kind of swirling around, and yet at the same time, that book has been out for years now, and people still will tell me occasionally, like, that book means a lot to me. It really connected with me. And so to remember that on the other side, there's the reader that I was, the hypothetical reader that turns into a real person that actually will connect with your work on some level, that I hope, will carry those of you that, do want to continue this into the publishing phase of things, well, you're already doing that. But I mean, you know, that's, I guess that's my story.
I love that. Thank you. And I think all of you spoke to this at some point, either in your introduction or in answering some of the questions. But could you speak to what you think is like a fundamental importance of Asian American and Taiwanese American representation in media and literature? And outside of this competition, what are some other ways we can work together to promote it?
I'll jump in since Shauna and Alvina keep having to go first. Um, I mean, you know, probably things that people have heard before, but um, even with, I would say, strides in recent years in both AAPI voices and specifically with Taiwanese and Taiwanese American voices, I think there's still underrepresentation. I imagine Alvina could speak to it from an editorial publishing side much better than I can, but it 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 it's different probably than it was 10, 20 years ago, but it's still not where it needs to be, I think. And so each voice is, to me, adds to the diversity, breaks down the idea of a monolithic experience, and is its own important story and voice to be out there in the world. So, um, and by promoting to promote it, other than competitions, I think it's really like heartening to see like Jaira's video, and I actually spoke with Jaira recently and learned that like there's still connection going on from last year's entrance, and that really, I hope that all of you believe it when we say that this is intended to be a community that's ongoing, that we know each other now and want to support work from young emerging student writers. And so that's how I think we can promote it best, is um, formally through things like competitions, sure, and publishing, but also informally through encouragement and support.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. We have this saying in children's publishing. I mean, it's not just children's publishing, but windows and mirrors. So, books can act as a window to another world or a mirror, of your own. And, of course, when I was a kid, even though I never saw Asian characters or Taiwanese, let alone Taiwanese characters, of course, I saw myself in the books I was reading. Like I saw myself in Anne of Green Gables, and I saw myself in just all of those classics. But there is a difference, when you see yourself so much more specifically. And I think that's why I got into children's publishing, is I wanted the children coming behind me to have that experience of seeing themselves so specifically. And I think with Taiwan also specifically is just most people have no idea anything about Taiwan. And they don't know the history, they don't know the relationship with China, they don't know just the culture. And so, I think as myself as a Taiwanese American, just having more people understand, that the culture specifically is important, and makes, I don't know, makes my life more comfortable. And I think, and just to add a little bit to the statistics. So there's a study that happens every year that talks about, characters of color versus white characters versus animals in children's publishing. And I think 3 years ago, it came out that there are more animal characters in children's books than characters of color combined. So animals are fine. Animals are, like the child substitute, but that was still just a little bit shocking of, in a way, are animals more important than like a Black child or an Asian child? So I think we still have far to go.
I see some citations in the chat. Thank you for that. We have a couple minutes left. I wanted to ask sort of a more fun question that I'm also personally curious about, both from like the publishing but also authorial perspective. Like, how do you pick the covers, and at what point does it speak to you, or do you feel like this is the cover that I feel best conveys what I was trying to write?
Well, I guess I could jump in from an editorial point of view because I mean, I don't know if Charles and Shauna's experience was different than most authors, but really the author doesn't get to choose their cover.
Okay.
Um, the publisher chooses the cover, but you know, at least at my company, what happens is, you know, before the designer starts coming up with cover comps, we do ask the author, do you have a vision? You know, do you have likes or dislikes? So we take that into account, but really we let, sorry, my cats are running around. We do let the designer kind of bring their own vision to it based on the book. And then we do show the author, and sometimes we show them multiple covers. Sometimes it might just be one where we'll say, this is the one that we all love. We hope you love it too. If the author doesn't love it, we do sometimes, you know, listen to them and change it because, you know, their name is on the book. But that's something that I think most people don't realize is that most authors don't get to pick their own covers.
But maybe another argument for diversity in publishing and diversity in cover designers. When my first book came out, 2009, a friend of mine who is Korean American, she had told a story of like, she's like, I don't want the cover with the back of the girl with the long black hair. And that was the one they presented to her. And she's like, no. And then so that was something, you know, I was wary of. And then when my book was translated into another language, I did get the cover with the girl with the long black hair. And then once I was aware of it and I started looking around, there are a lot of covers like that for books by Asian American female writers with the back of the head, the long black hair. So I think covers might be a little more diverse now, but more cover designers.
All right, last question for each of you, and I'll call on you. What is next for you? Charles, you want to start?
Sure. I am already looking forward to emailing Leona about next year. Just kidding. And we'll take some time off. I am looking forward to, yeah, rereading these entries on TaiwaneseAmerican.org. I have a ton of work, all of which is boring. Nobody wants to hear about that. I am trying to work on a short story and a book that will be published someday, hopefully in the next 20 years, but I don't know. It's very vague. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Shauna, what's next for you?
I'm working on some projects, but not ready to talk about them yet. But I had a long hiatus after I had a baby, and now finally he's old enough for me to start writing again. So I'm very excited about that.
And then Alvina, what is next for you?
Keep it on, keep it on. Actually, right now I am in the process of editing a new book by Gracelyn, who some of you might know. She's working on this hasn't even been announced yet, but it's, I guess, technically nonfiction, but basically the stories behind all of the food that you might see on a Chinese restaurant menu. So it's really fun, and I'm enjoying it. I actually worked on that today.
I love that. And hopefully what is next for everybody in the audience is your 2023 submission to our Creative Writing Prize. I was a bit bummed that we didn't get to hear from a high school writer during our session, but we had a very kind volunteer who would like to read one of her poems. She was a finalist this year in the high school category. So Kira, are you ready?
I'm ready. All right, so I submitted a two-poem collection called Letters to a Jin. I'll give some background and I'll read one of the poems. Because my mom's side of the family is from Taiwan, a lot of my exposure to Taiwanese culture and history is from them. And when my mom and dad were at work, the people who took care of me were my atu and my dim. And so my dim was the person who always cooked like Taiwanese food and at home, and also exposed me to both Mandarin and traditional Chinese like writing as well as the Taiwanese language. So for the most part, she was my connection to my heritage. Unfortunately, she passed away in March last year, and these letters are sort of, or the two poems which I wrote as letters to her, sort of addressed to her, really sort of say all the things that I never really told her explicitly, and how I miss her and how I'm thankful for her. So I'll be reading one of the two poems. It's called 217 Days of Grief and Counting, and I wrote it about a week after my birthday in October last year. So yeah. The day you passed was 7 months and 3 days ago. 217 days to be exact. The pavement still soaked by a morning downpour. An oddly quiet afternoon. Grief feels like your frigid marble hands, not the warm hands that I remember, not dry and cracked from dishwashing and gardening, not the ones that braided my hair when I was too young to tie my shoelaces. Grief feels like a Victorian kind of mourning, baggy turtleneck and long black skirt, as far away from your hot pink Hello Kitty as I can get. Grief looks like scrolling through our old messages at 1 a.m., changing the setting from delete after 1 year to keep forever. Grief tastes like toasted milk bread, crisp on the corners and gooey soft on the inside. At dinner, it becomes the sweet sour of my favorite food, your beef noodle soup. Grief smells like the spring blossoms as I walk out of school. I'm left wondering whether my eyes are watering because of my pollen allergy. When it gets warmer, the blanket you made for me goes back into the closet. I don't pick raspberries anymore because I can't share them with you. Grief looks like the changing colors of the leaves, the barren space where you grew pumpkins in the backyard. It tastes like tiramisu cake. Sounds like my family singing happy birthday without the harmony of your lilting voice. Grief feels like seeing you in a dream, struggling to find the words that I never told you, whispering into your shoulder that I've missed you. All right, thank you so much for having me have this opportunity to read my poem, and also for the opportunity to submit to this wonderful organization.
Thank you, Kira, for sharing, and thank you, Ian, and thank you, Yakuza Baby. We were so honored and grateful that we got to hear your work today. All of the selected entries will be published on TaiwaneseAmerican.org throughout the year, so we look forward to sharing those more widely. And then thank you to all of the judges for your time today and answering the questions. This session will be recorded for those who couldn't join us today or want to review. I'm sure the readers will want to see their feedback played back again. Like if I were a writer and I got that kind of feedback at that age, I would lose my mind. So I'm excited to be able to share it with you. Thank you so much for coming. Again, so grateful. Start working on your submissions next year and we will see you then. Thank you.